and we will send out a link to it to all of the people that have signed up for the webinar. We encourage you to ask questions in the chat window, and we will have some time at the end of the presentation to answer your questions. In the agenda today, we have a couple of quick PowerPoint presentations talking about application lifecycle management, and then the best practices and some of the outcomes that clients have shared with us. And then we will demonstrate our modern requirements suite so that you can see how some of these best practices are put into motion. And then we'll have the question and answer session. So with no further ado, I will turn this over to Tom Lindeman.
Excellent. Thank you, Bob. Good morning, everybody. It's not terribly early here. It's only 8, so it's all good. As Bob said, I am the director of the Visual Studio Partner Ecosystem in the sales and marketing team. We actually live under an organization called C&E, which is Cloud and Enterprise. We've got very close ties to Azure, Windows Server, SQL, etc. But we usually call ourselves the developer division. And Visual Studio is obviously the heart of our tool set and our developer story. And I wanted to set a little bit of context for a few minutes here and talk a little bit about our relationship with eDev and sort of what I do and how we have a better together story with our partners, certainly through modern requirements as well. Visual Studio is first and foremost a platform. I mean, think of it like, you know, Windows with apps on top of it, right? We have thousands of partner solutions that integrate with Visual Studio as well as TFS. Now VSTS, Visual Studio Team Services, which runs in the cloud for Teams, and also Visual Studio Code. So a lot of activity in our ecosystem. I run the VSIP Partner Program. That's at vspartner.com, and you can see a directory here of different types of partners that you can search and filter for, certainly including eDev. We currently have a Visual Studio Gallery as well as a new marketplace, and we get, you know, well over 1 million downloads a month of trials as well as sales. For people and teams that are looking for partner solutions to round out the scenarios and requirements that they have that are specific to them, whether it's mobile development or something in the cloud or whatever that may be. These partners help us fill gaps that we have. We have our salespeople you know, out talking to large, medium, and small corporations, and when they run into something that Visual Studio doesn't do, we are almost always very happy to say, yes, we have a partner that does that perfectly, and we recommend them. And eDev Tech has been one of these partners for us for, you know, a very long time. We have a great relationship. We've done things with them that we've not done with any other partner. I'll talk about a little bit about that. But that's sort of the context of what I do and where eDev fits in as a partner. Thanks, Bob. A little bit about how we look at dev teams and the ecosystem. Again, I mentioned that our partners fill specific gaps. Well, these fall into different areas, and this is an older diagram that Microsoft used a couple years ago. It's the ALM, you know, lifecycle, application lifecycle management diagram. It's still my favorite, so I keep using it. It does start much, you know, sooner and ends later than just developers working on stuff. This was a shift that Microsoft talked about again, a while ago, and the best way to think about it is we started to talk more about dev teams, and what can teams do, and how do they break down silos so that the testers are talking with the planners, you know, etc. And so you get this cycle, and you start up in the left where if you're doing agile planning or Scrum or whatever it may be, even the old waterfall methodology where you've got to write some specs, the first thing you do is talk about the requirements and the scenarios and the user stories, and you define, you know, what this product is going to look like and what this sprint is going to have in it. And this is really where, you know, Microsoft has got some things that help with this in TFS, and we've got a, you know, we've got a work item backlog and a Kanban board and some things like that. But the modern requirement stuff that eDev brings absolutely rounds everything out. I don't even have anybody else up in that category. That is absolutely one of our go-to products at this phase. And you can see where you come down into, you know, the development, and we actually put test down in here as well. So whether you're doing, you know, cross-platform stuff or you're looking at your code, it kind of happens down here. So you're building stuff on the left-hand side. And it comes over to you actually put something out there and start to monitor and measure it. So this is where you do your releases, however often those are. You start to do service health monitoring. This is what we call DevOps over on this side. And so there's another little cycle there. But this is some context into how we look at dev teams and the different roles that they have. And again, where eDev fits in by helping people use Office, which is obviously a widely used tool, to create their requirements, keep them in sync with the rest of the team. This concept of end-to-end traceability, automatic creation of test cases from your requirements, it's just really key in making this whole cycle work together. And so again, I mentioned that we've been working very closely with eDev and certainly Bob and Asif for a long time. I've been running the program for 5 years, and they've been our go-to partner in this area that whole time. Again, I use the term fill a gap. It implies that we've got all these gaps, but you know, in reality, it takes an ecosystem, and Gartner understands this as well, right? So we get very high scores on their Magic Quadrant report every year, and one of the reasons is because we've got partners that help us out, and eDev was specifically recognized by them this year for helping us with our requirements management area. You know, they started out with a product that worked on premise for TFS, and now actually this is called VS Online is now called Visual Studio Team Services as of a couple weeks ago. It is the cloud-based service for teams. It is not an IDE in the cloud, which is why we changed the name. And you know, eDev works with both of those, on-prem and in the cloud, and they've you know, they come on board with us early on. They're in our what we call a PTAP, a Partner Technical Adoption Program. They're in that every time we have one, collaborating closely with us on a development front as well as business and marketing. And we've done some very interesting things with eDev. The other part of it is, you know, sort of where the rubber meets the road, and our field sales guys just love to work with eDev, and they've landed a number of deals together where it really is a win-win for everybody. And sometimes the Visual Studio story leads, and sometimes the eDev story leads, and everybody comes together. And you know, our sales guys wouldn't be out there working so closely with eDev if it wasn't a fantastic solution that brought value to our story as well. So it's kind of a long bullet point down here. That's because there's so many places that eDev products are going to be found. The Visual Studio Gallery, as I mentioned, we've got, you know, 1.5, 1.6 million you know, folks coming in there every month. That's going to be transitioning into something called the Visual Studio Marketplace, which is a new spin on that that's commerce enabled, and we also sell first-party Microsoft things there. And then the other part of the story where you're going to find eDev products is in the Azure Marketplace. And again, you know, Microsoft's top-level vision really comes back to Azure almost all the time. We have that as a core company goal and foundation, and with eDev services in that marketplace, as well as running on Visual Studio Team Services, you know, which is an Azure service, it helps fulfill those scenarios for us as well. You know, I pasted something here on the right. You can take a look at it later. Oh, sorry, Bob. That was a pause. That was a legitimate pause. But come back a second to Brian Herring. We were at an event November 18th called Connect. We do this every year, and it's sort of the launch event for Visual Studio. Brian Herring is one of our senior VPs. He runs all of the TFS and VSTS stuff. He's built it up from scratch. And I just put this quote in here. He's obviously a big fan, and he highlighted eDev in his keynote talk November 18th. And you can actually watch those videos online. There's links from visualstudio.com. So I just wanted to call that out. Thanks, Bob. So one of the things that we are doing together, and again, we haven't really done this before, is we have included eDev Tech's products, specifically Integrate for TFS as well as SmartOffice for TFS, as a core benefit to MSDN. MSDN is our longtime flagship developer community. It's got all kinds of benefits to it, and we are super happy to be able to do this. There has been already thousands of redemptions of this benefit for eDev, and I like to think of this as it's a real classic win-win-win, right? Microsoft absolutely loves this. It brings value to MSDN. It brings value to our products. eDev has put this great offer in front of everybody, and it highlights them as having a deep relationship with Microsoft, and clearly it gets them a lot of visibility and reach through MSDN. And then for customers, obviously we talked about the fact that this bridges that gap where you've got business folks and development teams that need to stay in sync. They can use Office as well as Visual Studio and TFS as well as SmartOffice or Integrate to keep everything together. Helps them with traceability, regulatory compliance. There's just a whole list of things that I could have put in this box. You'll notice that box is bigger than the other two. But in general, that last bullet point is what it really comes down to. You're breaking down these silos, you're getting these teams to work together, and that increases time to market, time to fix, etc., overall productivity. And so again, we are really happy to have included this not as a separate product, not as a link, not as a recommendation. It is a core benefit of MSDN right now, and that's a real special thing. So I wanted to thank you guys again, Bob and Asif, and I'll be on to answer questions. I'll put my email in the chat window if anybody has anything they wanted to ask me directly, and then I will be around for the Q&A at the end.
Thank you, Tom. So I wanted to share a little bit about our company and our products, and also highlight some of the best practices that we're going to be focusing in on today. We've been around for 16 years, and our inaugural product was Integrate Studio that we released in 2006. And that product won many awards for us and was ranked the top requirements tool in a number of studies. it was really well known for structured requirements or waterfall requirements. Today, our suite has evolved to support both the agile and structured requirements environments and is much more lighter weight, leveraging the familiar Office components. The software industry today has really adopted agile practices in a big way. And the real motivator behind that, in our opinion, is to deliver business value much more quickly and have fewer failed projects. And agility is really the key that is driving business today. But when you talk about agile, there are many companies that have adopted agile or wagile or agile light. It's, to me, the Baskin-Robbins of agile, of software development. There are many different flavors to agile. So we're going to focus on agility and how our clients have achieved agility through using our tools. And when looking at the principles of agility, they really mirror the principles of the Agile Manifesto. And today, we see that business and DevOps agility is really driving almost every company that we speak to. Some have adopted the Agile Scrum approach in a purist way, while most others have adopted agility principles, and we see this in all companies. As we describe our tools today, and some of the best practices that clients have shared with us, hopefully you will see how our tools support agility in the application lifecycle. Certainly building the right thing is a very important aspect of software development. Building not what you think they want, but what they actually need. Having much shorter projects, learning from each project and growing and changing based on market needs is certainly something that we see all companies adopting today. Delivering user stories quickly, some with the concept of a minimum viable product or MVP, to get feedback from the business and from the users, and then evolving that is certainly something that we see quite often. And finally, embracing intelligent automation. Having systems perform functions that were otherwise performed manually, not getting caught in manually creating big documents, traceability, or manually creating test cases is certainly a foundational principle of our suite. So some of these agility concepts were really the foundation of the modern requirement suite. And this slide talks about how the suite is built for TFS, whether it's on-prem or using the Visual Studio Team Services in the cloud. All of these applications have plugins to them that connect bidirectionally to a requirements database and eliminate all of the issues that standalone documents and diagrams have today. Gartner and others have said that well over 50% of people today use Office products to define their requirements. And by developing SmartOffice, we have addressed the fragmentation, duplication, versioning issues that are present in standalone Office documents by connecting them to a requirements database. We have also created a browser-based suite to complement SmartOffice that's called Integrate for TFS that provides functions like baselining, simulation, and traceability. And of course, we support all of the native interfaces that are part of the TFS suite, including Microsoft, PowerPoint, Project, and SharePoint. And for those clients that have other applications in their application lifecycle ecosystem, we market and support a synchronization bridge to other applications to ensure that TFS maintains its position as the central source of truth. All of these tools simply assume the process template that you are using in TFS, and whether it's a highly customized process template or an out-of-the-box template, our tools work with it. The suite really takes users through the entire requirements lifecycle, from authoring through validation and review. And within these boxes, I've highlighted some of the best practices that our clients have shared with us that have really driven productivity and quality improvements in their requirements lifecycle by extending the capabilities and the very rich capabilities that TFS has in an agile Scrum environment, and producing documents, converting emails, reports and documents for sharing, automatically generating test cases. All of these functions, including the auditability functions, have driven significant value for our clients today. And we'll be highlighting these as we get through the demonstration. The beauty of the suite is that all users can connect and collaborate in a much more granular way. So the documents that traditionally have been created are static documents that contain a lot of information. And our suite allows you to manage that information within the documents and the diagrams and have people contribute that information and collaborate on that information using the very familiar Office user interfaces. The outcomes that our clients have shared with us include very significantly improved team productivity, and that's really how a lot of teams have realized agility by authoring within Word documents the user stories, particularly those with rich text. Clients have saved upwards of 30% of their time by not having to go from one to the other, but having a document there. Reporting, converting emails, automatically generating test cases has reduced UAT time for some clients by as much as 50%. Being able to fill that gap between the business people and the technical people in a very familiar user interface of Microsoft Word really reduces the time of review and approval and allows you a much quicker time to deliver business value. Improved clarity through the visualization that diagrams deliver, as well as wireframes and simulations, have allowed clients to reduce their development rework by as much as 10-fold. And then finally, clients who have regulators that they have to report to really value the capabilities of the suite in terms of auditability with the baselining and the traceability reporting. We work with clients in a variety of different industries, in the public and in the private sector, and hopefully some of these clients are familiar to the audience today. And finally, we ensure our clients' success through our professional services group, who performs a variety of services around our tools to really understand the client environment, provide some lightweight training, whether online or on-site, and ongoing coaching. And we also work with a number of world-class TFS implementation partners who have their own expertise to ensure a end-to-end ALM success for our clients. I will now turn this over to Asif, and he will demonstrate some of the best practices that I have alluded to.
Thank you, Bob, and good morning, folks. Well, except if you're from Europe, perhaps it might already be afternoon. I will share my screen with you, and we'll look at some of the scenarios that are used by our clients. Of course, there are many scenarios, many more than I'm going to show you, but to highlight a few. So one of the scenarios we have is if you have an email in Outlook, such as this one, you can convert this into a work item. So you open up the email and you choose the work item type. You choose on new work item from mail. You choose the work item type here. You can copy the attachments. You can also attach the email to the work item that you're about to create, and then you can go ahead and create the work item. Now, when you create the work item, what we do is we take the subject line and make it the title, and the body goes into the description. If it's a defect, then it goes into the repro steps, and so on. So in this manner, you have the ability to convert an email into a work item. Some people that we speak to actually like the fact that they can just attach the email to the work item as opposed to creating a new work item. Now, of course, you can always copy and paste your content and do that. This just provides a more convenient way of creating work items, especially when you get new PBIs or you get defects being reported. It's a quick way to create work items. Now let's get into Word. When you look at Word, we have extended Word with the Smart Word plugin. Now there are a few scenarios that Bob talked about that I'm going to demonstrate. One is that I've created a template, and from that template I'm going to actually go ahead and create a document, and then we'll use that document for creating work items. Now in this particular template, I have a feature that has the title ID description field, the target date field, the product backlog item can be defined, your requirements that is, and your tasks. Now, when I created this, I used the Smart Word Wizard to define the layout and choose the work items and their properties. Someone had asked a question on the chat window, on the question window, does the tool inherit, or actually how do you map the fields to TFS? And what we do is we inherit the process template. So when you connect to a team project while creating the template, it automatically inherits all the work items and their properties. So there is no manual configuration required. Way back when we started with Integrate Studio, that actually had a mapping file. But a few years ago, we decided that we are not going to have that configuration independent of the TFS process template. So now all of our products, both Integrate for TFS and SmartOffice for TFS, inherits the process template. Now, once I have a template, which is pretty straightforward to create, you can actually use this template to author in it. So I could go here and I could say user management, and I could go and describe it. And of course, as you describe it, you can also format it as you need to. And all of that formatting will go to TFS. You can add images and tables as you need to. You can choose your target date. You can define your product backlog item. As a user, I can register so that I have an account. You can again provide a description of that backlog item. You can define your acceptance criteria. You can define your effort here, and select your priority. And again, the drop-down values are also, of course, part of the process template that is inherited. And then you can go define your tasks and their related activities can be defined as well, and so on. Now, when you're authoring, now you can see I'm actually authoring in offline mode. I'll in fact go ahead and add another product backlog item, and so this is my PBI2, I'll call it, and then you have all your properties. So at this point in time, we are working offline. You can see most of the icons are disabled here because we haven't selected a project yet. When you're ready to publish this information to TFS or VSO, or what's now VSTS, you can choose your project on that server and then publish this information to TFS. And of course, when you publish, what it's going to do is going to create all the work items for you, populate the fields, and link the particular work items so that you have that information available. And as you do this thing and your certain fields are required, you'll see a pop-up that shows you what the problems are and how you can resolve it. So that is actually a brand new thing we have added, is the ability to detect issues, give a pop-up, and let you resolve those issues. One of the other things that you can do other than just publishing this information is, if you don't have information in the document, or if you do, I mean, regardless, what you can do is you can run a query. And by running the query, you can bring information back into the Word document. You can also get content into the Word document by doing a get work item as opposed to a query. And so if I were to search on the work item we just created from Outlook, which work item did we create from Outlook? So let's go select this work item. So if I choose that work item, I can bring in that information back into Word, so that you get that work item now available in Word. So you can do a get work item, or you can do running a query, and both will actually bring the content into Word. You can make the appropriate changes in Word and publish the same back to TFS. So that as you do this, say you open up the work item window through edit work item, so you have access to all the fields of the work item directly in Word. You will see that in the history, all the changes are recorded, regardless whether it's done through Word or through web access. By the way, folks, I'm using what used to be the Brian Keller's VM, and now, but it's officially called the ALM VM, which is Microsoft's VM, which has all the products in it, and so I'm using that VM because we are actually part of that VM now. That is broadly available for people to try out with the entire infrastructure in place. So the two primary use cases of Smart Word, one was the ability to create templates and publish. The other is to bring in content through query or get work item, and then be able to update this information. If this information gets updated, say in web access, we will, so let me just go to user management here. And I update this information in, say, web access. Then in Word, you can refresh it, and that will bring the value back to Word. Okay. So what this gives you is the ability where your document never gets out of sync. Now, as you're doing Agile projects, or any type of project for that matter, there are stakeholders that you want to engage that may not be using the web access. They want a sort of a Word document that they can review, provide feedback on. So from a feedback perspective, you have two choices. One is you can simply turn on track changes, give it to them. They can update this as need be, and they can send the document back to you. You can accept or reject the various changes and publish that back to TFS. That's one way to do it. The other way to get feedback is either have a discussion on the work item directly in Word, or you can have a feedback process. Now, from a discussion point of view, you can put in your comments and add that comment, which comment then becomes available directly in the history tab of under discussion only. And any comments here would be available directly in Word. So this is more informal discussion, but if you want formal feedback, you can click on the feedback button. And what you can now do is you can say, you can provide some feedback, and that feedback becomes available to everybody instantaneously. So you don't have to send the document back, just like the discussion. You don't have to send the document back. It's being done against the work item, but of course within the Word, directly within Word. So you could go here, you could say, I love Smart Word for TFS, give it 5 stars, of course, and submit your feedback. And that feedback is now available for others to consume and work on. You can also bring up this and then assign the feedback to whoever that might be appropriate, and or close the feedback if you're done with it. So it gives you sort of a closed loop way of managing feedback, as opposed to what happens often is the feedback gets lost in the red lines, revision after revision. Here it is managed. So those are the 3 main scenarios. Now, of course, I'm giving you very simplistic scenario examples of the scenarios, because simply we don't have the time to get into more elaborate examples. So that's from a Word perspective, right? Author, report, collaborate using your own templates that you have created. The other thing that that people find, especially in Agile and Scrum, but I presume for that matter in more structured requirements as well, is the ability to leverage diagrams. Now, people use Visio extensively. Certainly, most people we speak to do use Visio extensively. It's used for doing process models, and it's used to do design artifacts, requirements artifacts. And the context within Agile really is that if you're trying to get an understanding of the scope of the project, a business process model is a really good way of getting that context in place at the epic level or a feature level. Now, what Smart Visio allows you to do, and by the way, this is my my favorite product by far, because it makes the process of identifying, say, features, like this one, where I can say this is my purchase processing workflow, very easy, because I'm building on the knowledge I've already developed, or someone has developed this knowledge. So I'm not opening up, going to the web access or going to Word and independently defining this information, but it is building knowledge on knowledge. You can also go against individual activities and say, I'm going to define a product backlog item here that is, as a user, I can, so that blah, blah, blah. And create these work items against the shapes or against connectors where we want to support delayed shipment. And so this PBI is now created against this connector. So you're really using the information you have to define your work items, and you may even further go and sort of say, I want to decompose that into certain tasks, design it, for example, and integrate it, and whatever the various tasks might be, you can see it's getting decomposed on the right-hand panel. And when I select my process, you can see the overall decomposition is taking place. So as you're building on this knowledge, you are creating your work items in tandem alongside. Now, what we have the option of saying show state overlay, which color codes the various shapes and connectors where work items are linked, so others are easily seen as suspects. You can go ahead and you can generate scenarios, and scenarios are automatically detected. In this case, there are 3 scenarios detected. This particular scenario is where checkout is aborted. And now you can go ahead and publish that particular work item to TFS. And likewise, we can record all the scenarios, because the scenarios really are more of an integration story or integration of the PBIs. Now, if you have built a good process, you can see you can mine that information very effectively. One other thing you can do is to generate test cases. So in this case, we have determined that there are 4 different test scenarios. If you look at the 3rd scenario, it is where the checkout abort is aborted, and then you go through the basic path or the happy path. So you can call this abort checkout followed by the happy path. And I can go ahead and publish this as a work item to TFS. And so when this work item is published, of course, now you have access to this in Microsoft Test Manager. In the summary, you have the visual of it, and in the tested backlog, we have linked the work items that it covers. Now, in this case, it only covers 1, but if there were many, it would link them automatically. And this, in effect, gives you a jump start to the testing process. Otherwise, you can imagine it would take a lot of time to develop all the scenarios. And this is a simple process. And we have many clients that actually really use the tool to do the scenarios and test case generation from their processes. Particularly, I'm thinking of a client that uses this in an agile environment and have told us that it has improved their UAT efficiency by 50% because they use it in UAT. So that's the Visio, some of the use cases in Smart Visio. Now, when you look at creating traceability matrices, which most people will tell you is a smart thing to do. The problem you run into is, how long does it take to create one? And the way most people do it, it takes an enormous amount of time to create a good traceability matrix. So we have developed, and in fact, this is sort of a new traceability matrix model, which is part of Integrate for TFS. Previously, we only had SmartExcel, but now this is a sort of a more V2, if you will, of that traceability. In this case, you're selecting 2 queries, and then the traceability matrix will basically show you the intersection of the result of the 2 queries. As you put your mouse over, you can go ahead and edit the work item. You'll be getting a work item explorer option here shortly. It shows you where the links exist, where the coverage is. The links are shown as directed arrows or non-directed arrows. You can break the relationships directly in the traceability matrix, and you can also create links directly in here. So you have the ability to create links, break links, and these icons are actually showing the state of the work item, which you can turn on and off. And so this is again, the V2 version of our traceability matrix. One of the things we're adding to this is the ability to export this information as Excel. So directly, this view can be exported to Excel. Although SmartExcel produces a similar report today, but directly in Excel as opposed to doing it on the web. The one last thing I want to show you, which is a common scenario. Oh, by the way, one of the important scenarios or test cases is you want to look at, say, the health of a project. So you have a query that says, give me all my requirements or PBIs for this iteration, and give me all my defects, and they'll tell you how things are. Or you may say, give me all my PBIs or my test cases, and it'll tell you how good your coverage is, so that whatever test results you get out of testing, how complete is that result going to be? Because if you don't have good coverage, then you may pass all the test cases, but what does it really mean unless you have good coverage? So this gives you that. Of course, from a compliance point of view, there's a lot of value in this. But now that you don't have to spend hours doing it, perhaps days to do it, you can generate this traceability matrix pretty instantly. And you can create as many traceability matrices as you like, so that you can, at any time, look at a particular perspective. One of the things we have is simulation, which I won't get into, but that's the wireframing tool. You can both do screen navigation and screen design, and link them to work items or create work items against them. But what I will show you is baselining. So you have this ability to create new baselines. And when you create a baseline, you can select the work items that you want to baseline. And once you have created the work items that you want to baseline, you can then open up the baseline at any point in time and be able to see what that baseline looked like. For a given work item in the baseline, you can also compare it to other revisions of the work item. Either it was created before or after the baseline was established. And when you do that, you see this track change mode show up as to what has changed between, in this case, revision 505 to revision 1. Or you can compare it to other revisions. You can also compare a baseline to the current state of TFS. And in this case, this is saying nothing has changed across the board. So I just created this baseline and never have made changes to this particular fabric and fiber project. Now, what you can also do is you can compare a baseline to other baselines. And so it'll tell you, in this case, 3 work items have changed, many have not changed, and others are not found. That means there are new work items that were added to the baseline, to the newer baseline. And you also have the ability to generate a difference report in a couple of different formats, so that if you did want to produce an output that could be used as a release notes or a starting point of that, or for your auditors, or for whatever reason, you can produce an output, in Word document-based output. So with that, I will take a pause, and we can get into answering any questions that you may have.
So one of the questions that was asked was, what type of license do business users need to have? And I answered that in the chat window, and the answer is we have a Smart Word Reviewer license that is available at no cost for business users to install. And with that, they can look at a Smart Word document. They can redline it as they do today, or they can invoke either the discussion panel or the feedback panel that is within the Word UI. So they're still using Word to review and approve. They can provide discussion and see what other people are saying. They can provide feedback. They can rate the requirement. And all of that information is captured in the history of the work item, the discussion in the history, and the feedback creates a feedback work item that becomes a child to the work item. So if they redline it, the business analyst can approve or reject the changes and save the incremental content. Otherwise, the business analyst or product owner will see everything that they have marked in the review panel. So again, that is a free capability, and you can have an unlimited amount of business users take advantage of that review capability within the tool. There's another question, is it possible to integrate work items from different TFS versions and templates into a document? Asif?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Bob. Could you repeat that?
Is it possible to integrate work items from different TFS versions and templates into a document? No, it's not. You could have multiple work items across projects if you had a query that was sort of across projects, but the template is made based on a single process template, a smart template that is. So you could have work items from multiple projects, but they have to be from the same, they have to be based on the same process template. There's another question here about the baseline tool. Can it be set up offline? I'm not really sure what that means. Maybe Özlem can elaborate on what exactly that means, or maybe contact us and we're happy to talk through that with you. There's another question, if business users have a reviewer license, then who typically authors the document requirements? The business analyst or the product owner would create the initial set of requirements. And if multiple people are working on the same project, contribute different aspects of those requirements, then produce the requirements in a document, either all of the user stories in the sprint or however you want to produce it. and send that document to the business users for review, and they would comment on it or redline it. There's a question about where you can call for support. Certainly you can call our office. Usually what we ask is that for support issues you register them in our online tracking tool, and we provide quick email support, but our phone number is listed on the website, and if you call one of our support analysts, there's a support number when you call the switchboard, and you can talk to our support analysts. There's a question, where can Microsoft partners locate, download, and install? On our website, modernrequirements.com, there is a download page, and you can download a 30-day evaluation of any of the products that we showed you today. And there are 3 different types of downloads. We suggest that you use the web installer because that's the quickest, but there are exe file and ISO files as well. And if you like the tool, please contact us, and we can talk to you about how we can work with you. There's a question about the traceability report from a story to a task to a test case to a defect. So you can create a horizontal traceability matrix for any type of work item and show the parent, the child, the grandchild of that work item. So we have come to the top of the hour. We still have a number of questions. We will answer these and send the people that ask them the answers. We really appreciate everyone's participation today, and you can expect to get a link to the recording within a few days, and be on the lookout for subsequent webinars that we will be scheduling. Again, thanks a lot, and hopefully we fulfilled all of your expectations in attending today. Bye for now.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Goodbye.